It was a winter's night like any other. The sun setting hours ago had brought in a cold darkness that had enveloped the grounds. A fine mist of rain was being cast down upon the contours of the old stone cathedral. A man walked peacefully towards the towering structure in front of him. Pathways intertwined with one another, linking the church and its grounds to civilization, bordered by waist-height greenery. The chilling wind howled ever louder, ushering in an uncomfortability in the air, the distant storm that loomed overhead being pulled in from afar. A flash of light and a clap of thunder revealed two large oak doors, with the battle scars of age on the surface and handles. Approaching the oversized doors felt different to him this time, intimidating, the sense of dread built up inside of his stomach. He sighed loudly and shook it off. "It's nothing." His whisper could be heard faintly across the courtyard. "It's just like any other night," he convinced himself. Reaching his hand out, he hesitantly twisted the handle and pushed. They took some effort, but the doors eventually opened, slowly. The only thing louder than the rain and the door creaking was the overwhelming silence he was met with, like a door into another world. The man's footsteps echoed ominously as he entered the cathedral. The heavy wooden doors creaked loudly behind him until the iron bolt of the door slammed down and echoed throughout the cavernous void-like room. He stopped to take in the sight, admired the stained glass faintly lit from the dim candles that flickered gently. The soft glow from the burning wicks casted eerie shadows that appeared to move on the church's wooden floors and massive stone arches. He usually came here at this time to avoid people, to pray and to talk with his Lord alone, without the disturbance of others. Yet this time, he found himself in a room not quite empty. A cloaked figure sat before him at the front of the church on the first row. "I'm not alone tonight, it seems," he mumbled almost silently. Not wanting to disturb the cloaked figure, he decided to take a seat in the back of the cathedral. He knelt in the pew, his head bowed, and began to recite a prayer. His words filled the vast, echoing space as he sought solace and forgiveness within the holy walls of the cathedral. Several moments had passed, hands clasped together with his head lowered. When he finally looked up, he got the shock of his life. The cloaked figure in the front row had turned its head all the way around to face him, yet its body had not moved at all. The cloak was no longer concealing its face, but it was far too distant and dark to make out any detail beyond the greyed skin and blank expression. He hastily put his head back down, startled and in disbelief of what he saw. "Must just be my imagination. I'm truly losing my mind now," he thought nonchalantly. However, paranoia crept into his mind and overtook his thoughts. What if it was real? He gathered the courage to look up again to peer into the darkness at the mysterious figure. It was still facing him, staring into his eyes with an icy glare, with ashen skin covering the warm face. Something wasn't right though, and that's when he realized. It was closer. The hooded figure had moved 3 rows closer, sat in the exact same pose and with the same expression, head snapped round 180 degrees to face him just like before. "What the fuck?" he exclaimed with fear. As a test, he decided to look away just for a second to confirm a theory of his. When he looked back, it was confirmed. The creature had moved once more, in a split second, another few pews closer to him, in the exact same pose yet again. Suddenly, the church atmosphere had frozen, his breath forming a thick mist with every exhale. He stood up slowly, keeping his gaze fixated on the creature, his heart rate increasing exponentially. "All I have to do is get to the door without looking away," he mumbled to himself, with a shake in his voice. One step backwards into the darkness behind him, one step closer to freedom. 2 steps, making progress. 3, 4, 5 steps into the void. He had been holding back the urge to blink, but couldn't take it anymore. After a split second of darkness, his eyes opened again to reveal the creature sitting in the same seat he was just praying in, ever staring into his soul. This time he could see the figure's disturbing face, pale grey skin etched with scars and cuts, blackened eyes that cried a deep crimson fluid, all with a blank, emotionless expression staring into his being. He continued his escape to the door behind him, taking each step slowly so as to not trip, inching closer and closer to his final destination. It must be close now. Just keep moving. The quiet atmosphere was shattered by the sound of a loud creak in the old floorboards a few feet behind him. He froze solid, not knowing what to do. His heart pounded out of his chest. A few tense seconds pass as he decides on his actions. Either turn around and let the creature move, or gamble that the noise was nothing, and keep pushing to the door. He pressed on, ignoring the noise he had just heard, whilst keeping his eyes locked upon the death in front of him. Each step seemed to take longer and longer, as if he was trapped in a never-ending nightmare, walking backwards into the abyss forevermore. The sound of him bumping into the huge oak doors rattled the church air, between the silent walls. He breathed a sigh of relief, seeing that the creature had not moved a muscle. The door was right there. All he had to do was leave, to claim his freedom. Just as quick as he calmed himself down, he rapidly found himself panicking again, after a strong gust of wind was unleashed upon the now extinguished candles. "Fuck this," he shouted, as his fight or flight response kicked in. Ignoring the creature, he turned to face the door and barged his way outside. He tumbled out of the door and almost directly into the creature that was standing before him, still in the same pose, still staring blankly. Luckily for him, he had managed to keep eye contact and prevent it from moving any further, despite his overwhelming fear. "You almost got me," he yells confidently. "I'll be leaving now." His words were cut off. He could no longer breathe. The original creature had gripped him from behind and started to drag him back into the pitch-black cathedral. With a chain wrapped around his throat, he continued to struggle and scream, desperately attempting to grab anything nearby, yet it was for naught. As he choked on his last dying breath, he caught a glimpse of the second creature, standing at the door watching. Only this time, with the faintest of smiles across its face,